Welcome back. You're watching the Front Row. We are looking at the President's State of the Nation address that was delivered today in the joint sitting of the Senate and the National Assembly. His second last State of the Nation address before he leaves office in August 2022. And of course, you'll be periodically also seeing some of the highlights of the things the President talked about on your screen. But let's bring in our panelists at this point. Professor Alfred Amenya is a governance expert, a commentator on current affairs issues. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you here. And Professor Exen Iraq is an economist. Prof, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Front Row. We've seen what some Kenyans have had to say. Cost of living still seems to be a very huge issue for Kenyans. But let's just start with an overview. You've listened to speech, long as it was. Right. What are your thoughts about what was the President trying to communicate to Kenyans today?
No, thank you so much, Akisa. I think the President did very well in terms of elaborating where we are. And then, on the other hand, I also think the President did quite badly in terms of, whom he is to us. He's our leader, and whom we are as a people, as Kenyan people. He didn't address those things. In fact, the President's speech today was a list of projects. And I like using the family scenario. As a father in my family, I don't go telling my children, my wife, and everybody that I paid school fees, and I bought a car, and I bought a plot, I did whatever. As a father, I'm meant to inspire my children, to achieve better and so on. So, on one hand, the President did very, very well in terms of the technocratic. We saw a technocratic President, and the technocratic President then broke down what government has been doing and the meaning of this thing. And I can make a few highlights. Yes, the President said, look here, we built these many roads, and it is more roads than all the governments combined.
Doubled.
Exactly. The President talked about the amount of money we're spending on education, which is 26% of the budget, which is actually second globally. The President talked about what we're doing with the pipelines. The President told us what we're doing in Lamu. The President told us what's happening in Kisumu. The President told us about expressway and all these wonderful things that they're actually doing. The President went to CBC and what is being done there. So I saw a technocratic President who was actually picking on the list of issues that government has actually done.
What is this you expected he would say that he didn't?
But I was expecting a President who is my leader. How would this affect the way the President would deliver his speech? For example, we are saying, what does it mean to spend 26% on education? What does that actually mean for us? What does it mean to grow Kenya's economy so that Kenya's economy becomes one of the largest economy in the continent of Africa? What does that actually mean? What does it mean to have Kenya as a stable country from military spending, which the President spent all about, in a situation where we have instability in the entire Eastern African region? What does it mean, for example, to have a functional democracy? The President spent time discussing the failures of BBI rather than telling us the successes of democracy in Kenya. As a leader of the nation, I expected the President to spend time, making us feel good about ourselves as a nation and rallying us towards a broader goal.
Didn't he do that by no. Up, but I want
and I'm coming to that just now. You see, the ordinary Kenyan is saying, look here, but I think life is tough. I think the cost of living is soaring. I think school fees is expensive and so on. Did the President address that? Not at all. So as far as I'm concerned, the issue is that list of excellent performance by government does not necessarily translate into leadership by the president and the political party. And leadership is then experienced in terms of what the people are asking.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Fair enough. Let's bring in Prof. Just your opening remarks here. Professor Omenya here seems to feel that the president just listed for us the projects that the Jubilee government has undertaken since 2013. Do you share the sentiments?
You know, Professor Omenya used to be my schoolmate when we were much younger and more innocent. So I don't want to make this a forum for us to settle grudges. So I'll be very objective. I listened to the speech about 2 hours and 18 minutes.
Correct.
That was by any standard a very long speech. But I think the president did his best to try and talk to Kenyans. One, I like the vocabulary he used. And maybe that would be the vocabulary that is going to define Uhurunomics. Accelerating the economy, big bang, big push, and other things I've never had before. So he tried to define his legacy with the language. Another thing that he did that was very inspirational to me is to go beyond the post-independent period. He looked at before, during the colonial period, and was trying to compare what happened in the last 125 years, the last 118 years, which I think was very ingenious. Number three, I think the president tried to talk to everybody. Whether you're in Western Kenya, Northern Kenya, Central Kenya, Southern Kenya, he tried to talk to everybody. And he tried to talk to everybody in terms of your socio-economic class. So if you are rich, if you are poor in the middle class, there was something for you. And to be sincere and to differ with my former classmate, I think the president made us proud. From 12th position to 6th position. If you look at the data he presented, whether it's about GDP growth, KIA corrections, education, healthcare, he really wanted to make people feel proud about this country. And I think that was very good, because if you had 2 hours, talk of what you have done in 9 hours, you cannot talk about everything. But I think he selected what was important, what I feel was important for this country. But there are two things I feel he left out. He did not talk about 2022. I think he should have spent some time telling us about who is going to leave us with when he leaves this office.
What are the chances he would have used that platform to pick a successor?
He might not have said who is the successor, who the successor is going to be, but he would have hinted to us. And I think he would have spent more time talking about debt. But if I were to give him a score, I would give him something like 7 out of 10 in terms of performance in that speech. And I have a feeling that he cut it somewhere. He would have said more than that. But I think the members...
No, but you remember he even said, kitu imekuwa mingi sana.
Yes.
Some of them want...
But those are the responsibilities of being a president. There are a lot of things you do that you may not want to do. But overall, I think he tried his best. My friend might not agree with me, and by the way, he has never agreed with me in the last 30 years.
So it will not start now?
Yes, I'll be very surprised if he agreed with me.
Okay.
But I agree with a number of
Prof, you needed to come in before I ask you a question.
Yes, I agree with Prof. Iraqi here on a number of issues, that yes, indeed, the president did very well in terms of elaborating to us what we've done and how we've moved. And it's highlighted, and those are facts. He's highlighted the growth of the economy, for example, the growth of GDP, which are powerful. It's highlighted to us, the investment in infrastructure and all these other things. But then, where I disagree with him a little bit is that what didn't the president speak about? Prof here started highlighting it. That you see, the thing is that we've had difficulties as a country. And one of the biggest difficulties we've had as a country is on the issue of debt. One of the biggest difficulties we've actually had as a country is, anyway, the job creation. So the numbers that the president was giving us there, really, I mean, it doesn't translate, into what people feel in their pockets. So as far as I'm concerned, the president should have also spent time, looking at what we could have done better. And what we could have achieved. And I think the president squandered the last bit of his speech by whining about BBI and failure of BBI, including the money that would have gone to the counties. How would a leader address that type of a situation? As far as I'm concerned, the president should have looked at the positives. In fact, for me, I was waiting to be inspired. The president should have looked at the positives of the stoppage of BBI. The reason why BBI was able to stop is because Kenya has a functional democracy. Kenya has a functional governance system that actually can enable the courts to stop the president and his entire agenda dead on the tracks. Many African countries don't have that. So instead of whining about what failed there, I would have turned it the other way around to look at, yes, you see, our democracy is not just about the president. Our democracy is that the checks and balances. And sometimes some of these checks basically stop us dead in the tracks of what we're going to do. And for me, that's where the leadership thing failed. Because I would have taken a tone where we're saying, look here, Kenya, we're aspiring to this big developmental state that is based on counties, on devolution. And we made a step, and because of a very functional democratic system, that step was frustrated. But the principles still actually make sense. And we're saying, look here, in the future, with the next leadership that's actually coming in, they'll take the mantle and push the country to better systems. So the president then spends 20% of his time whining about the failure of BBI.
So it was at the very end. It was not even 5% of the time.
Well,
to be fair to him, it came at the tail end of his speech.
Akisa, you're right on this one, and I withdrew because I listened to the entire speech, but I think
we all did.
because the speech was long, so I think
it came at the tail end.
It was an exaggeration, really.
Yeah.
I think to be fair to the president, yes, but coming to the actual marks that XN gave, really I think the president still did well. On that one, we agree.
What marks would you give him?
You'll be surprised, 60%.
Are you acting as an external examiner?
Of course, I'm an external examiner. I'm not part of the Jubilee government.
Back to the conversation here. The president took a considerable amount of time talking about the GDP.
Right.
Where he found it, where we are now, what has been done over the years, even going as far as talking about the sectors that he thinks have helped grow our GDP. For example, he's talked about ICT and the growth that this particular sector has seen since 2013, giving the example of where we were in a country, as a continent, or within Africa, where he found us and where we're going as a country. But there's still feeling, with all these niceties that was said by the president, and even from the comments I'm seeing on social media, Kenyans still feel things are tough.
Correct.
When his speech was over, a few guys were interviewed, some MPs, and some of them echoed the same, that despite the growth in GDP, things are tough. And one of the reasons why things are tough, and the president alluded to that, is because of COVID-19.
Right.
The economy contracted because of COVID-19, and then people are feeling the pain. So the economy has grown, no question about that. But one of the things that was not alluded to was inequality. The economy can grow, but only a few people benefit.
Only a few people benefit.
And I think that's why people are saying the economy has grown, but have not felt it. The road has been built, but I don't have a car.
Correct.
So I think that's one issue that the future presidents are supposed to start addressing. The economy should grow, but everybody should benefit. If you remember, when we had post-election violence in 2007, the economy was doing very well.
Correct.
If you look at Ethiopia, the economy is doing very well. So any economic growth must be inclusive. Everybody must feel that I'm a part of this growth. And the question that comes at the end of the day is, the economy has grown, but do I have money in the pocket?
Exactly.
If I have money in the pocket, statistics don't matter. So I think that is one area that we need to address in future, inequality. But to be fair, he tried to talk about every region. That's what he was trying to balance. I've done that for that region, I've done that for that region. But the question boils down to an individual. Have I benefited? Have I felt it? And I think that is one area that he did not probably emphasize much. And he assumed that people will probably interpret. But I don't
Prof, just before you come in, even as we say that COVID-19 has exacerbated the situation.
Right.
We were having a conversation about high cost of living even before COVID-19.
Which is not surprising, because if you look at the economy in the last 15 years, maybe the last 10 years, one of the things that I found very unique about the growth in the last 5 years, maybe the last 9 years, it has been very steady. We have not been having up and downs. So the economy has been growing, but the cost of living has to go up for a very simple reason. A lot of people don't have jobs. The unemployment rate is very high in this country. So if you don't have a job, you don't have a means of living, then you always feel the pain. Because if you are getting some money from business or money from employment, then even if the economy is not doing very well, you have at least some money. But if you don't have a job, you don't have a means of livelihood, then the economy will always be hard. You always find things very costly because you don't have the money.
Even those of us who are working, Prof, are finding things very costly.
And that is the reason why you notice that the presidential candidates, whether you look at the former Prime Minister or DP Ruto, they are all talking about how do we reach the people at the bottom of the pyramid, the hustlers, because they know they are suffering. So at the end of the day, the question that we should be addressing is how do we create jobs for Kenyans? How do we make sure that the people who have smaller businesses expand them and are able to cater for their business?
Before Prof comes in, do you think that's a failure for this government, especially when it comes to the employment or unemployment question?
I probably would turn it the other way around, because anytime there's unemployment, we blame the government. But we should ask ourselves, what role have we played as individuals? Because the government does not create jobs. It is you and me who create jobs.
Talk to the person who's very vulnerable. Right now, has done a degree, gone out of school, there are no jobs.
Totally agree with you.
Shrinking space.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And that's why the government, if you look at the presidential candidates, the key leaders, they are talking about giving people 6,000, helping them come from the bottom of the pyramid. So I think the government should do something, but individuals should also do something. Let me give you some statistics now that you like statistics. The government of Kenya, central government, national government, plus the county governments employ only about 800,000 Kenyans out of 53 million people. That is a drop in the ocean. So where are the other people working? In the private sector, in Juakari, in SMEs. So I think before we blame the government, let's also ask ourselves, what have you done to create jobs? You talked about graduates. If today you told a graduate to go and study plumbing in a polytechnic or in a college, instead of going to do, let's say, one of those social sciences, he will refuse. But when you leave the university, you want the government to give you the job. Remember, we don't give jobs to individuals. We give jobs to skills. And that's what people should realize.
All right. Prof, before you come in, is that a fair assessment? And especially on the unemployment question in this country, it seems to feel that the Jubilee government, it's like we are departing. We are not blaming this government for it, but a lot of Kenyans who are feeling that strife at the very bottom of the pyramid have all the right to blame their government for not providing a conducive environment.
I think a case of this one, I totally disagree with Professor Iraqi.
There you come again.
And it's good. I was waiting for the opportunity. If you look at what the president presented today, the president is basically telling you that Akisa, in your neighborhood, there's a rich man who has built a 120 million house. And then in Iraqi's neighborhood, there's a man who has actually built a 1 billion house. And then in Mandera, there's another man who has built a 3 billion house. So we're doing well. That was the story that we had today. In Kisumu, MV Uhuru is working. But what does that translate to the guy in Kisumu? Fisheries is collapsed in Kisumu. In Lamu, we are going to create the most fantastic port in Africa. What does that mean for the guy in Lamu who's living there? We are saying, look here, we're doing the lapses, we're doing the oil refineries. What does that translate to the guys living the Lapsset corridor? We are saying, look here, we are enhancing the performance of the port in Mombasa. What does that translate to the guy who's living in Chuda and in Mikindani and in all these other places? As far as I'm concerned, of course, even talked about the expressway. Yeah. What does that mean for the guy in Kibra who's walking every day to industrial area? As far as I'm concerned, the president did not talk at all to Kenyans, because those are the Kenyans. They're the majority. They're the voters. They're the guys in rural areas who walk long distances, to work, to build this economy. They're the guys who are coming from Malili to build Konza City. They're the guys who are working on the baths in Lamu, and so on and so forth. The president was basically telling us, look here, you have a very rich neighbor. We are going to do a big project and all these wonderful things. Think about it. Put yourself in the shoes of the ordinary Mwananchi. In Kisumu, in Laikipia, the president talked about the light rail. I'm not belittling what the president and this government has actually achieved. But what I'm saying is that we need to connect what the president and the government has achieved with people. This country has 50 million people. This country is not about some 1,000 people who are going to drive on the expressway. This country is not about one or two big businesses that are doing logistics and so on. The president failed, as far as I'm concerned, in his entire speech to connect the bigger picture that Jubilee is doing with the ordinary citizen. So it became about projects, but you couldn't see how these projects then relate to the ordinary Kenyan on a day-to-day basis.
All right.
And that was across his entire speech.
Okay, I'll let you.
You see, my friend, it's good we are not a boxer. I would have tried to box you physically. But if you look at the Jubilee government the last 8 years, I think, Wandera, you are right about the conducive environment. If I have some skills, if I'm an entrepreneur, has the government given me the right environment?
Yes.
We are talking about the regulations. We are talking about getting easy access to credit. We are talking about getting a market for my goods and services. That's what we should be asking.
Ease of doing business.
Has the government translated that and made it easier for people to do business? Now, for the last 50 years, people used to blame the national government. Then we say, let's have devolution. And I want to ask the question, now that there has been devolution, now the functions have been taken to the counties. Have counties facilitated people to do their business, to be entrepreneurs? I saw something today that Nairobi County is going to employ more Kajos, 700. Are those going to facilitate people to do business? So at the end of the day, I agree with you. The government should facilitate people, make it easier to do business.
Correct.
And what I thought at the end of the day is if you do an expressway, if you build roads, if you say GR, if you give people power, if you give people water, you are facilitating them to do business. But at the end of the day, creating jobs is about the government and the people. You cannot just keep on blaming the government. And I think that's a mistake we make in this country because Bill Gates is not the government. Walmart is not the government. All the big companies we admire are not the government. In fact, if you look at Kenya, the only big area where government has created jobs is TSC, or the armed forces. The rest of the jobs are created by you and me. So let the government and individuals like you and me come together and create jobs. We cannot blame one person. But that does not mean
the environment conducive?
We're not blaming.
But that does not mean that I am exonerating Jubilee.
Yeah.
We're not blaming.
I think they would have done better than that because the cost of power should have gone down so that at the end of the day, we don't close businesses because power is so much. And I think there are some licenses that we can remove so that we make it easier to register a business, we make it easier for you to run your businesses, we make it easier for you to file taxes, and we make it easier for you to export your goods and services across the border so that you get a bigger market. So I think the Jubilee government is not blameless, but I don't think we should hit it so hard. We should also look at ourselves. Yes.
I don't want to a point here to get lost because you mentioned something about the race now and the economy being the greatest conversation in our political race right now, and especially for the presidency. And you've mentioned the need for whoever will take the next government to ensure equality, so that then we're not talking about projects that are just benefiting, are top-heavy, just benefiting the bourgeoisie of the society, but trickles down to the very grassroots levels of this country. How do we bridge that gap?
You have mentioned a very important observation, and I'm happy you're not a politician, but you have to get to the mind of a politician. If you build an express highway here, everybody will see it and say this was built by so-and-so. But if I go to school, all of us, nobody knows whether you've been to school. Yeah. So politicians tend to come up with the projects that people can see and vote for them. But some of the areas that matter most cannot be seen: health, education, your happiness, and so on. So I think when we come up with the projects, we need to look at them critically and find out who is going to benefit from them now and in the future. Because if we don't do cost-benefit analysis for projects, then we end up having projects that benefit a few people or are politically palatable. But how do we do that? If you look at the Constitution, it's very clear that every big project should have public participation. But do we go for that? Once MPs go to Parliament, we give them freedom to do what they want. In fact, I would ask my prof here, have you ever gone for public participation?
Yes.
Yes, that's very good. But if everybody went for public participation, we would have projects that are going to benefit more people and close the gap in inequality. But if you don't participate as voters, that will continue even after the next
So you take
president.
it back to voters and participation or lack of.
Yes, lack of participation.
When these policies are being put in place.
Yeah, we should participate because they benefit us. We are the people who put those people in power. Why don't we police them? Because if we don't participate in decisions as voters, then those people do what they want. They come up with the projects that benefit them, not the voters or ordinary citizens. Then we start blaming them, and we're watching. There was a joke the other day where in one of the countries, and I'm not going to disclose, public participation, only one guy turned up, and he was suspected to have been mentally unstable. So where were the elites? Where are all the people in this country should be saying, no, we need to do this and do that? This country is not for politicians, it's for you and me. And we should have a stake in making the decisions that matter.
Prof, do you agree? Do you agree with that analysis?
I totally disagree again. Because if you look at it, Akisa, the issue we're talking about, look at the expressway. What is the public participation in the expressway? The Wananchi went there and said whatever they wanted to say. Government didn't listen. So you see, just arriving there and being part of the numbers, you see to me that doesn't add a lot of values as actually well. But then more fundamentally, and again to put things in context, that we are agreeing that the Jubilee government is not a total failure. But remember, our DP is actually part of the Jubilee government. Why is it pushing for a different economic approach? I think it's naive to sit here and say that the Jubilee government approach, particularly when it comes to economic development of our country and empowering our people, has worked. Because if that was the case, we would not see Ruto talking about his Wilbaronomics. The thing is that it has failed. And the guys running the Jubilee government have recognized that it has actually failed. The president was quiet about it. And that's all right. Because, yes, I mean, he had chosen to only highlight his successes. I think it's really irresponsible for us on a national TV to come and actually say that what the Jubilee government has done in the last 8 years is working for ordinary people. That is stretching our imagination too far, because the people in Jubilee themselves have recognized that it has actually failed. So, Kisa, as far as I'm concerned, and again I disagree with Prof on this one, why on earth do you need leadership? Why on earth do you need to elect anybody in office if the responsibility still remains with you to solve all the problems? We cede our power to those in authority so that they can act on our behalf. So whether Jubilee likes it or not, Jubilee will not blame us for not doing public participation. We've already ceded base of our power to Jubilee to actually make decisions on our behalf. So I think, again, it's naive to come and blame the public, to blame me and you for the failures of Jubilee government.
Just so we don't lose it.
Yes.
When you began by saying that the president has taken time to enumerate the big projects that they have done, but President Uhuru Kenyatta didn't focus on how these projects have translated to the people. How should he have done it differently from where you sit?
Yes.
What did you expect to see?
I'll tell you, Akisa. The thing is, and again, I like using the family analogy, but I'll use the presidential analogy. I think it would be very humbling and very powerful for the president to say, look here, I feel you. I feel you Kenyans, because you are actually jobless. We have not been able to create as many jobs as you had wanted to create. The Mama Mboga, you don't have money in your pockets. Some of these things have been created by issues beyond us. And these will put things in context. But the president actually acknowledging where they've not delivered. We're not saying the president has, that this government hasn't delivered. But now your delivery is put in perspective. So that I would have expected a bit of reflective address to the nation. That, look here, guys, as a country, we have a vibrant democracy, and yes, that's a positive thing, and it's a fact. I talked to my brother Raila, doing 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and we stabilized the country, and we've been able to move forward. It's a fact. Kenyans know that, and we love it, and we appreciate it. But on the other hand, we are saying, look here, Kenyans are broke. Kenyans are suffering. Kenyans don't have food on the table. Kenyans can't pay school fees and so on. The president should have acknowledged that and said, look here, maybe we would have actually done our things a little bit different.
Well, that is acknowledging failure.
That's the strength of great leadership. When you tell your children, look here, as your father, we have moved as a family. We would have wanted to do 1, 2, 3, 4 things, but of course there are limitations. And we're going to address it, because what that does is that it enables you to position the challenge so that you can deal with it in the future. Or even the guys who are coming after you, dealing with it in the future. Let me put a practical example, and Prof agreed with me on that one, and he highlighted it. The issue of debt. The presidential address was confusing to us. Are we okay? Are we doing badly? Are we doing very badly? You had no idea at all. The president should have come in and said, look here guys, we've grown the economy, our GDP is huge, we are collecting taxes, but we have this animal called debt. And every country incurs debt. What is our debt situation? Are we doing badly off? And the president should be able to explain it, to say, look here, I think we are a bit under pressure, and the next government...
Again, acknowledging failure. Exactly. The president is a politician.
Exactly.
Yes, you're right on that.
And that makes superior politics.
If you're a politician, you don't accept failure.
Yes.
You're not superhuman.
Particularly on the TV.
President is not Christ.
Let's Prof come in on that.
I think what my friend wants to bring in this debate is that the president should have been as specific as possible.
Yes.
And the president should have sacrificed his political ambitions for Jubilee and say that I'm reading Jubilee, and any failure by Jubilee, I should be squarely blamed. I don't think any politician will do that.
That's not what I'm saying.
All right.
That's what you're implying. But
hold on to that thought. We're coming back with that on the when we come back from the break. The debt question still continues to be a very thorny issue from a lot of Kenyans. And of course, we were asking you whether that State of the Nation address met your expectations. Arakisa Wandera at KTN News KE. The hashtag to use is FRONTROW. On our text line, 22155. I'll be taking a look at a number of your views when we get back from the break with my panelists. Stay with us.